The writings started initially with the Egyptian with all these hieroglyphics. When someone died then, like the pharaohs, or what we call them, pharaohs or whatever, when they died, of course, there were some inscriptions upon their tombs inside the pyramids, and they were ascended to the heavens. In other words, they were thought to have joined some of those stars up there. And so the Egyptians would inscribe things upon the tombs of these pharaohs, and that's how writing started. And then right before, close to the first century or Ado Domini, or this common era, people started writing. It was only a few people who could write. It was only a few people who could read, and so it was only the fortunate few who could write. And so there were so many stories that were written. So people started having these thoughts of a Messiah. People, who were hopeful, because around the Mediterranean Sea or around the Mediterranean area, that area had been accustomed to wars left and right. And so you would have the Romans at that time from around 200 BC to up to about 500 AD or 500 CE, the common era. The Romans were rulers of that time. And so because there were so many beliefs around this area, you had Africans with their own belief systems, and near the Romans had conquered them. You had the Germans worshipping their own kind of God or belief. There were so many beliefs around that time, and so there were so many disagreements, and even the thought of a Messiah, and all this to begin with started with the idea of the fight against the Romans, where you have there were these rebels, the Nazarenes, the Maccabees, the Sadducees. All these people were rebels against the ruling mighty Romans at that time. And so when all these played out as such, and when there were so many disagreements, and where there were so many writings against the Romans, or some writings of people's beliefs, it became obvious for the Romans, who were now colonizing this whole entire area, where you have the east of Rome and west of Rome. All of those areas were conquered, all the way down to Egypt. You remember, even going all the way to the Middle East. All that area had been conquered by the Romans, and this is why you have so many rebellions. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of written and accounted for rebellions against the Romans. The Romans were really mighty and strong, but they had endured so many rebellions that it became obvious to the emperor of the day, Constantine, that it became necessary to have an organized system of belief. And so here is why he called upon a council where there were 310 bishops, some from the African side, I'm talking about the Egyptian side here, and all this Eurasian area. So all of these people came together, right? Came together and for 7 councils, starting in 325 AD, it was 325 CE. They all came together to find one conclusive agreement as far as what to believe, how to believe, and to have one organized system of belief. These councils, 7 of them, started 325 AD, and by around 498 or around 500 AD, about 200 years later, they had agreed. That creed was to say that they decreed that this is the beliefs that we're going to have. We're going to adopt these books that had been written a while back. Some of these books some of those books were removed, and you have someone like Athanasius, Arius. These are folks who were in disagreement that the Ben Joseph, or what you call now Jesus, was born of a virgin birth. You know, the Africans were in harmony with natural birth. The Africans didn't have that belief of some virgin birth. The Africans believed in, hey, we don't have any issue with procreation. But to attach this so-called new system of belief to another realm on the horizon, the Constantine organized councils decreed that this was a virgin birth. So to say the least, here is a story of men who actually said, all right, we have so many beliefs, and we're going to decide which one to believe and which one to put it in writing. This is how they came with the 4 Gospels, the Mark, Luke, John, and whatever. So they decreed and say, all right, I mean, the stories were, the Ben Joseph had a wife, he had children. Some of those things were gotten rid of. They're like, no, we're not going to accept those. This was a virgin birth. And of course, you know, there were other virgin birth stories from India and all these other regions. These are stories that were around. Everybody was saying, hey, guess what? You know what? My saint, or in my belief system, there was a virgin birth. So everybody else would come up with a story and say, hey, this was here is a virgin birth. So because of those so many stories, Constantine is like, nah, I'm going to put this together. And we're going to sit down for 7 councils. They agreed. Here's why when you say December the 25th, that's a made up day. No, there's no record of any virgin birth or some birthday of a baby Jesus on the 25th. These were stories that were decreed, man. It's men. What is crucial here is men saying, you know what? We're going to believe, we're going to agree, we're going to do what? Agree. A council is called upon to debate over things. And you're not going to debate. Now, listen to this carefully. You're not going to debate the works of a God. Here's why when we say religions that we have today are man-made religions. Because it's the councils, 7 councils for 200 years, who decreed that these are going to be the beliefs we're going to follow, because there were so many of them. And therefore, because it's men who sat down and on a council and agreed to adopt a particular constitution. Really, this is a constitution, not given down by some God. No, from stories. Biblia is a story, a small little book. So there were so many little books, and that's why some were adopted, some were removed, like the book of Enoch. Some of those books were gotten rid of. So the adoption of the new constitution, which we turn around and decreed it, the people who disagreed, they like the bishops Arius and Athanasius. Those people were chased off, killed. If you didn't believe in this new decreed constitution, you were going to get killed. And that's how Christians for hundreds of years ruled. Because if you didn't believe, you were going to get killed. So they were really forcing this new belief system upon the people. And again, the other side of this is Constantine, after, like I said, around 200 BC upwards to about 200 CE. Just yesterday, 200 CE. The Romans had been fighting so many rebellions, and it started looking like it was going down south. It was falling. The Roman rule was falling. And so here's why you have the Maccabean rebellion, the Sadducees rebellion. And then you had this Nazarene rebellion, where you have this man who was Ben Joseph, the son of Joseph, And you know, so many of these names were changed. It used to be Joseph, Jerusalem. But since English was adopted, this German language was adopted, they've since changed it to Jerusalem, Joseph. So the son of Joseph was with the Nazarene party. And this Nazarene party, which is crucial for us Africans, is to understand that politics come about because of a dispute. It's a way to find settlement. These political things you hear around here is because a community, because a country has had so many disagreements upon the welfare of the people. You have politics to fight for how to share this cake or share the bread. And so religion is an organized ways of beliefs. So it is why Constantine had to come in and say, all right, I've got these so many rebellions, the Maccabees, the Sadducees, the Nazarene movement, which was a party led by, at one point, by Ben Joseph, who you call now the son of Joseph, who you call now the son of Jesus. These guys were like, you know what, we cannot allow Romans to rule us. And so Emperor Constantine realized that if I organize a system of belief, if I can conquer these people mentally, if I can adopt this Christian fashion of belief, then by default they will be part of me, and by default I can rule them. And so when you hear a kingdom of heaven, if this was a kingdom in heaven, they would be say, you would read things like kingdom in heaven. You have to really think through this and really understand what really happened here. Politics, again, is a dispute of settlement. All of this religion is organized beliefs, and the Nazarene, the Maccabeans were all parties that were rebelling against the Roman. Understand that. So now when you have things like the kingdom of heaven, it's like this kingdom right here is for the heaven. But you don't have the heaven. You got to think about this. So when the Ben Joseph guy was crucified for fighting against the Romans, that's outright clear. All of these Nazarenes and Maccabeans who rose and were overpowered were crucified or were killed for fighting against the Romans. So then comes in the Messianic movement, where people used to think there is a one coming who will be the light of the day. And so when Constantine and the Roman emperor and the Roman Empire started shaking and started falling, Constantine realized that to survive here, I have to adopt a different fashion, a different idea, a different route, a different way of looking at things. This is why he called on those councils. And because of those councils, they decreed, like I said, what you now have as a Bible. Out of the belief system from the Egyptian, the Amun-Ra, they were worshiping the sun. The Africans down south in Kenya, in Uganda, we were worshiping the sun. All those were consolidated into one document. Now, because today, because this weekend, or because this week is what you call it, the celebration of your sweet baby Jesus, I'm wanting just to let you know that these days were made up. In truth, they were following up north, they were following the movement of the sun. Because at this time, around this time, on the 23rd, the 24th, the sun has been going down south. Here's why it gets darker. So when what the Romans did, or what these people who met, they also consolidated the ideas of the sun rising, the birth of the sun, because the earth was moving or leaning away from the sun from September all the way to December. it was leaning away from the sun. And that's why it was getting darker up north. Until around this time, the sun, the earth started leaning back towards the sun from the 23rd to the 24th. So they say the sun is born again. Because now the sun, the earth is leaning towards the sun and it's getting brighter, or we're getting more daylight. So every day from now until June, we're getting one extra day for those who live in the north. We're getting, and every day we're getting 1 extra minute of more sun. From around December the 25th. So it wasn't about a man who was born. It was about the sun coming back from the south. Because if you look at it from the north, for those of us who live in the north, you can see that it gets so dark early in December, from way back in September, all the way out in December. By December the 23rd, it can literally get dark at 3 p.m. But from December the 25th, we start getting more sun. And the sun rises a little bit early and sets a little bit late. That's what they noticed. And so when they decreed, they said, all right, on this day from the 25th, a son has been born. And they changed that S-U-N to S-O-N. You got to follow these things, my friends. These things are so obvious that sometimes I sit back and I wonder, what are we missing, man? So that for our people to celebrate things that were given to us by somebody who colonized you, by someone who conquered you, by someone who enslaved you, by someone who molested, raped, and did the worst to your children and your wives and your grandparents and your grandkids. I'm not saying hate anyone. I'm telling you the stories that were given to you were not for you. They are not for you to get better in life. It's not going to help you in your life. What we follow now is a tradition of a people who are living a particular way, a conqueror, a fighter, who was finding ways to survive when they realized their fights, their dominion was falling. And so for us today, around this time where you call it Christmas, yeah, if this is a month that or a week that we've decided to celebrate and exchange gifts and relax and be with family, that's fine. But if you genuinely think that it's a Jesus that will come back, then you've misread history. You've misread the scripts. You've misread almost everything written. When Ben Joseph came through that messianic movement, remember the Maccabees, the Nazarenes, and then the messianic movement, they were saying another one will be born who will take over here. Another one will be born who will be the hero here. And when he said, I won't go away, I won't die before the new kingdom come, he was talking to that people in that generation, that the next Messiah is the one who will what? Redeem his people from the grip of the Romans. It was about that. It ain't got nothing to do with that African south of the Sahara. And so if you're sitting today thinking that sweet Jesus is coming back to you, you have misread history. And you have been fooled by friends who you think are your friends, but they're taking advantage of you. And you can see how the chaos and the misery and the delusionment amongst our people, that the lie that was created by the Romans is continuing today, so that even a preacher today is lying to his own people and can make you take off your clothes, can make you do whatever, because it's the same lie coming out of that constitution that was decreed, where people were killed, where people were thrown out, where people were moved, where people were forced to believe Them days, I don't know which Pope was decreeing the slavery of others. So you're following these ideas that came from people who decreed these things, and now today you believe this is God's word. You read that book. Go ahead and read that book. Think about it. Read that book. Don't be told what happened. If you read that book and you find a verse or a chapter where a father is sleeping with his own children, 2 daughters, and makes children with 2 daughters, if that to you is still a sanctified holy book, then not only have you misread history, you've also been conditioned to a point where you don't have any common sense. Because common sense tells me no matter what book I read, if I find something in writing, something in there that says it's okay for a man to enslave others, it's okay for a father to make children with his own daughters, that book should be put to, or should be burned. I almost said should be put to rest, but should be burned. And so, my friends, here it is. I'm not trying to see some of these things that we share or we say sometimes. I'm not saying some of these things because I'm trying to make friends. I'm not in the business of making friends anymore. I'm not trying to be popular. I'm not trying to be loved. I don't really care. I don't need to be loved anymore. I know some of the people who will hear my voice because of the conditioning they've been given, or they've been made to be hateful, and they might be hateful of I believe. I don't care about that, people. By the way, actually, I love them. I record some of these things like this because I love you and I love our people. I love my people. I love us. And so I'm not trying to make friends. I've realized in these years I've been in this earth that you can never, it's impossible to make friends. Every day you're making friends. Your friends can turn around and poo-poo on you. Your friends are the ones who will sell you out. Your friends are the ones who will stab you in your back. And so I'm not trying to make more friends. I'm trying to say let's reason. Let's use our heads, guys. Let's think about these things. Because if you have heard this voice right here and you don't go investigate what I'm saying, and then turn around and teach your parents or your grandparents, them who never have been told about what I just told you, that you are one of the failures in this earth. And if you understand this language, this voice right here, and you don't go investigate this, you don't go teach your children, you don't go teach your loved one, you don't go teach your African friends and families, then you're one selfish person. The least you can do is cross-check what I've said here. The least you can do is go grill and question that preacher that you go to him every Sunday. The least you can do here is sit back and open that book. Find a verse that a man named, don't even remember his name. It's in the Bible. Sleeping with his daughters. It's in what I think it's Exodus, where you're being decreed or you're being told who to slave and enslave. It's in this book that a man is supposed to be above a woman in this day and era. If you read this book as a woman, where you see a man releasing his daughters to be wives of the people they never agreed to be, where you as a woman are supposed to be under a man, and you're still okay with that book, then there's something wrong with you. Not the Bible anymore. Not the preacher anymore. You've got to take the high road here and think about this and approach it in a particular way. Because this is right here. Belief is nothing but just your personal sentimental. Think. It is something in your brain. It ain't got nothing to do with your belief should be within your brain. But if someone else is programming your brain, then you need to deprogram what you've been programmed to believe. Because belief means nothing to me. Again, I'm not trying to make friends. I'm telling you, belief is nothing. In this world where we are in a scientific world, you should be looking for evidence. Just like if I go see a doctor today, and if the doctor tells me I need, or you need, or I need to undergo a surgery, he or she has to give me some evidence to prove to me that I actually need that evidence, that surgery. It is the same case for you. Because this man-made belief or man-made religions, blood was shed to force our people to do that. You still believe in some of these cults that were given to you. Again, were given to you by a colonizer. And I'm asking you, out of love as an African to an African, to think about this thing. To sleep on these things and wake up tomorrow a different day, a different person. Understand that this have got to change. You have got to change now. Because if there is any struggle in your life, and if you think these struggles are going to be sorted out by a Messiah, if you think that there is supposed somehow a miracle coming your way, my friend, I'm worried that you're far off, and it's time for you to change and look at things different. So I share this small little clip here because of the love, because of the things that I've investigated, because of the things that I've read, because of the things that I've endured and experienced. I share this because I think it's fundamental to the African. And I'm an African just like you are. And it's time we tell each other the truth. It's time we be truth seekers. It's time we be the emancipators of others. Let's not be these selfish people who know better and do want to share better. Our African friends and family members are in deep trouble. And nobody has ever come out to tell them how they were lied to, how the colonizer lied to them, how Paul himself in the Bible said, I made these things up. Look it up. In his own word, the guy said, I made these things up. You have no record, not one record of any of these people. Not one. A man who walked on water. You don't even have a tomb for him? And yet we have a graveyard of the emperors who were hundreds of years before this supposed Son of God was born. You have these writers, about 800,000 words of a book, and you don't have not one single last name of these people. You can only say the book of Mark, and you don't know who's Mark, what's their last name. Where in this planet do you know of someone who around that time in the ancient didn't have their last name? You don't have a graveyard, the graveside of these people. You don't have any record of these people. You don't have any proof that they ever existed. It is why I'm telling you these things were degreed from stories written and stolen from others. So I ask you to please take a look at this, think about this. Again, I've always said, give me a place to stand and I shall move the earth. Give me a place to stand and I shall move the earth.